Welcome to the Nonfiction Writers, podcasting in a great way. I'm Ryan Aber here at the Renaissance Hotel in beautiful Fort Lauderdale, Florida, here with Jason Kersey. Once again, the Nonfiction Writers, as always, presented by Edward Jones. How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial services companies in the country? By not acting like one. Call 1-800-ED-JONES for the Edward Jones financial advisor nearest you. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC. Jason, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing all right. It's been an interesting day, that's for sure. I think that's probably what we're here to talk about for the next few minutes.
You think?
Yeah.
Since I just drug you in here blind and we didn't talk about what we were going to address on this podcast?
I know. That's what I'm saying.
But in all seriousness, it has been an interesting day. We're able to go out to both Clemson and Oklahoma's media days today, where every player and every coach is made available to the media for a 1-hour window for Clemson, a 1-hour window for Oklahoma. And obviously when that gets brought up, we had talked a lot about what Oklahoma was going to do about Joe Mixon, who hadn't talked to us all season after the incident before last year, but finally got a chance to hear Joe Mixon talk himself. Didn't say a whole lot about what transpired a year ago that led to him being suspended.
No, and I get that. I mean, I had a conversation with an OU, a guy in OU's communication office, and I said, you know what, if I was in your position, I'd probably say the same thing, that there should be no, only football questions. But in our position, we have to ask, and I think that's something a lot of people don't understand about our jobs is that we have to ask those questions because we haven't had a chance to yet. And there are a lot of people, even if the masses on the people on Twitter say no one cares, I think a sizable portion of Sooner Nation, and probably a majority, does want to hear from him and does want to hear him address that incident. I one phrase I saw a few times was beating a dead horse. Well, how could we be beating a dead horse when we've never talked to him?
Yeah, the horse isn't dead yet.
So, but yeah, he came in. They had a table that was just for him. Obviously, he was surrounded by reporters, national and local Oklahoma reporters, and it got a little bit uncomfortable at times. They tried to really stick to the football only thing, although there were still moments when he would shortly answer other questions. It was a really interesting. It was just an interesting situation. It's very unlike anything else we've encountered.
How was it different from what you thought it might be like going into the day?
I don't think it was. I think this is about what I expected. I thought that Mike Houck, the guy who runs the communications office, sat there with Joe and sort of helped deflect some things. My impression of Joe Mixon, I mean, I had talked to him one time before, and it was at the spring game right after he'd signed, but he wasn't here yet. I went down he was down there on the field, and I went and talked to him, and then he was okay then, but my impression of him today was I thought there were moments when he seemed very combative and a little cocky, and I don't think that was I thought that was bad. I didn't think that was good. I don't think that was a good look for him. I think he's going to have to show some contrition at some point. But then there were other moments, and I said this on Twitter a little while ago, where he was he gave us little glimpses of the personality that we've heard so much about. I mean, how many times, Ryan, have we heard from his teammates about how energetic he is, how funny he is, how he smiles all the time, he's always happy. And there were moments when that started to come out a little bit, but then a lot of times that would be, it would go back to the other way when someone would ask a question he didn't want to answer. And my understanding is there are, he's got his lawyer is giving him the advice not to address it. But I really think it's doing a disservice to him. And I think today was unfair to him, very unfair to him.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to ask you. And we had talked about this a little bit earlier in the day, but you knew that today he wasn't gonna get into that stuff. You knew that today he was going to get asked about it a lot. Would he have been better served had he come out and talked at some point early in the season, at some point before they got to Miami, even if it was a similar situation where we're only going to talk about football and those questions would come up, but somebody would be there to deflect him. It seems like to me that he would have been better served at least going through that at one point before, one, because we wouldn't care about it as much, for better or worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm of the opinion that they should have done some sort of press conference, maybe even right after his plea deal, after the criminal case was over. I think they could have done something, had him apologize, had him make a statement, take a few questions, and then this, what a lot of times, you try to kick it down the road as much as you can, but it's never going to go away until you address it. And I think I'm trying to think of examples of it, but there are a lot of examples of things that happen, and you get out in front of it and you address it, and then it's not as big a deal. And so I think they should have done something right after the plea deal was made, but they didn't. They moved it down. They kept, I think they tried to get him ready, and they didn't feel like he was ready. But to me, if you knew he was going to talk at Orange Bowl Media Day, which they are required, every player is required to be there, or OU gets fined. If you knew he was going to talk, then I don't see why you wouldn't have done something during the last month with the local media and just, had him at least, because those questions would have come up then too, but at least that would have been a smaller group. It would have been in a more comfortable situation for him. It would have been at home, basically, in Norman. Maybe he's more comfortable with it. And then when you get down here, he's already addressed some of it, and it's probably not nearly as big a deal here. But here, it's the first time we've gotten to talk to him, and it's the first time USA Today and Sports Illustrated and all of those big outlets have gotten to talk to him. And so, to me, I think his lawyer and OU, whoever made that decision at OU, did him a great disservice by not doing something sooner, so that his first interview session as an OU football player with that baggage hanging over him didn't have to be 2 days before the biggest game of his life with that many people there.
Moving forward, if OU is able to win this game, they're going to have another similar setting, although that one will be in Norman, the media day before the national championship game. What kind of atmosphere would you expect at that? Is it going to be any different? Is it just going to be more the same? Is it going to be, okay, now it's time to move on and we'll ask him football questions?
If there's another one of these next week,
and that's my understanding, is that there is.
Yeah,
and it would be a Norman.
I mean, if he's available again, I don't see the point in bringing it up much anymore. I mean, I understand, maybe some sort of asking around it, or maybe, what was last year like for you? Those sorts of questions, some of which were asked today. Maybe those sorts of questions being asked again or in a different way, but I'm not sure how much you have to get into that again, because they did at least do it today. So at least next time that he's not gonna do it. I think he's going to have to address it someday. I mean, he's just going to have to. I mean, let's not forget, he wants to play in the NFL someday, and the NFL media is going to ask him about it. The NFL general managers are going to ask him about it. The scouts are going to ask him about it. I mean, I think future NFL teams, right now with the Ray Rice stuff and Greg Hardy, and I'm not, I don't know, I'm not going to rank the sins here, but with those issues, violence against women, the NFL is very conscious of that right now, and any NFL team that's going to take a chance on someone with that kind of baggage, I do think that they're going to want to see you express some contrition, because otherwise, why would they want to draft you and have to deal with that PR mess themselves when you've never addressed it before, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does. And this is, in general, a pretty forgiving country, and when people stand up and say, I was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, and try to move forward with their lives, most people are pretty forgiving in that regard. But that has to happen at some point, where you say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, and whether that comes soon or not, I don't know. But I also think that the longer he goes without saying he's sorry, the less sincere it's going to seem.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think at this point it's hard for it to come off as sincere.
Yeah.
Being a year and a half after the fact.
Yeah, but I still think he should do it. And look, I know there are legal issues, and I know that there are he's got a lawyer that's advising him, that if he even so much as apologizes to his teammates or whatever, that could be used against him in a future civil case. The bottom line is, you and I saw that video. He's probably going to lose a civil case. I mean, the video is what it is, and
yeah.
So I think at this point he just needs to
do it and
move
rip
on.
The Band-Aid off and
move on because if they do it, he won't get asked about it as much anymore, if at all. There will come a point when it never even comes up anymore. I mean, how many times did Ryan Broyles get asked about stealing gas the last year he was on campus, or Dusty Dvorak get asked about what he did, the last, after the initial whatever. So,
yeah, and I think it's interesting also because I was talking to a current sports information director at one of the games that we were at this season. Won't mention which one it is, but he had a background that wasn't just college athletics, had done some professional work as well, and talked about the difference in the attitudes from where he was before to where he is now. In the situation he was in before, somebody gets arrested or whatever, you want to put him in front of a camera as quickly as possible to get it over with, to move on, where it's not a story anymore, because it's going to be a story that day anyway. So why not compress the story into one day and move on, versus where he was now, where it's like, oh, this kid's not going to talk after he gets arrested. Why would you ever insinuate that? Where it becomes not only a story that day, but a story that when he finally does talk, and a lot of points in between at times.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are countless examples of that. I mean, I think about Riley Cooper, the Eagles receiver, who was caught on tape at a Kenny Chesney concert, yelling the N-word. The day after that came out, he was outside in front of the Eagles facility answering questions, apologizing, contrite, and it went away. Marcus Smart went into the crowd and shoved a fan. I mean, think about that. He went into the crowd and shoved a fan, and the next day, OSU had him in front of cameras saying that he was sorry for what he did. He didn't take questions, but he did say he was sorry for it. And then Travis Ford and Mike Holder took questions. And then, eventually Marcus took questions about it, and that's gone away. Nobody talks about that anymore.
Yeah. So,
and that was he went into the crowd and shoved a fan.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and it's interesting to sort of distance yourselves from it. And, we've clearly been a part of covering the Mixon thing from the beginning, but it's interesting to distance yourself from it and look at the approach that OU has taken versus the approach that OSU took in that case, that various other places take when something like this happens.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, I know that a lot of people that tweeted us and probably listen to this podcast think that we're out to get Mixon, or that we are, we're out to get him, and we're not. I mean, that's just not the case. We're doing our jobs. And our jobs demand that we ask those questions. Our jobs demand that we cover this story, and we're not going to stop doing that because, again, I think that a lot of people – I just think it's really hard for people who aren't in our profession, who are big fans, to understand. Because I sort of get the notion – I understand the notion that he's a 19-year-old kid. He made a mistake. Why won't you let him move on? I get that.
Yeah.
Mentality. But, I think that the side of it that we're coming from is very different, and it may be difficult to understand for others.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But it'll be interesting to watch how Joe Mixon does Thursday in the Orange Bowl, 3:00 on ESPN against Clemson. and how this goes with Mixon and the media moving forward. Whether we get to talk to him if they win, well, we will get to talk to him if they win, but how that looks in the near future at least. But Jason, thanks so much, and we'll be back with another edition of the Nonfiction Writers podcasting in a great way very soon. But that's all for right now. As always, Nonfiction Writers, sponsored by Edward Jones. How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial services companies in the country? By not acting like one. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice from the 60-plus Edward Jones financial advisors from Purcell to Edmond, Yukon to Hera, and everywhere in between. See for yourself how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Call 1-800-ED-JONES or visit edwardjones.com for the Edward Jones financial advisor nearest you. Edward Jones, member SIPC. Once again, I'm Ryan Aber, joined by Jason Kersey today, and you can check out our work every day at newsok.com and every morning in the Oklahoman for the best OU coverage anywhere.